Samwel?
Yep. Thanks, John. I'll try to share my screen first. Is it full screen?
Yep.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks. Yeah, I don't want to repeat myself. My name is Samwel Moses Ntapanta, and as John said, I'm part of the Anthrotox project, which I hope we can discuss later. And my research project is on informal e-waste activities in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I'll keep also that for questions later. So I just want to go direct to what I've prepared today, which is a presentation from one of my chapters where I'm looking on labor and kinship relationships. At one of the e-waste sites or e-waste workshop in Dar es Salaam, but also how issues of history, capital, and hierarchy comes in. So I would, okay. Seems I have a technical problem. Normal with the, let me try again. This is common problem with the Zoom, that you make a trial and then you think everything is okay. Then after, yeah, perfect. So yeah, I just wanted to build my argument on contemporary electronic waste recycling models. There are different models in different countries. For example, the one on the left Tanzania doesn't have a comprehensive e-waste management strategy. So e-waste is embedded in other strategies, especially the solid waste management strategy, but also the Environmental Management Act of 2004, and is usually just mentioned. So e-waste recycling falls under the waste management hierarchy model, which was proposed in 1998. And while I was in field work, UN Environment and University of Dar es Salaam and an NGO called the Agenda for Environment, they were trying to develop a new strategy. But nevertheless, they adopted the same old waste management hierarchy. And on the right is one of a very comprehensive model from Switzerland. And this is purposely for e-waste. But for the matter of this presentation, I don't want to go into these models. But my argument is, and from my field work, neither of these models, and this is huge argument that I'm putting forward, will yield what we aspire to in terms of e-waste management. And throughout this lecture, this seminar, I will try to show why I think these models somehow have a problem when we look on the ground what is happening. So to start with, I would like to show some photos, and these photos will be about cookstoves. So here's the few photos. So the photo on the left is a place in Dar es Salaam. For those, I can see some few friends from Dar es Salaam are here. This is at a Macho CCBRT bus stop. It's a coffee place under a tree where usually men meet all day, depends on when you are free, where we sit here and drink coffee and drink ginger tea and, you know, have chat about politics, football, and so many things. The photo on the right is not mine. I didn't find who took this photo, but you can see the president of Tanzania on a similar place in another place where coffee is being made and the people drinking. But you can see central to this sociality is the cook stove. The second photo, this is a photo from my friend. We went to university together, and she has a very nice cook stove, a gas stove in the house, but still she has a charcoal stove outside the house, which is also similar to the photo on the right. This is my mother's kitchen, where she has a comprehensive, very nice gas stove, but still she keeps her cook stove. But on the left photo, you can see this is from a bar in Dar es Salaam, where barbecue is being prepared. And there's a saying in Dar es Salaam, I would say in Swahili, they say, bar ni jiko. That when you own a bar, it's not about selling the drinks or the beers, but it's about having the kitchen. That's the only thing, that's the thing that attracts people to come. So I'll leave it there, and I'll come back to these photos as I go in the presentation. So in March 2008, me and my team from the Anthrotalks, we went for a pre-field visit. And we had all this imagination from what we have read from the news and in literature about e-waste being exported and being handled in dump site, and the stories about Abogriche and also Guayu in China. So we went with that thinking that we will find these piles of electronics waste in the city. So we visited the Pugu landfill, the only landfill in Dar es Salaam, and this is what we found. And the question was, where is e-waste? Where is our project? So I approached the Mahakama friji, the one you see in the photo, sometimes at the beginning of seedling rains in October 2008. And from a distance, I could see visibly piles of scrap materials, smoke from burning wires, but also a lot of sounds, the cacophony of sound that really astonishing me. Standing a few meters from the entrance, waiting for my host, George, one of the master crafters, I could see crafters seated on old car seats with a piece of rail gauge positioned between their feet while they hammer. And then I could connect the sound that I heard was coming from this hammering. Later that evening, scrap collectors arrived from a long day around Dar es Salaam suburbs, sweat and tired and dirty and thirsty. But with them in their carts, they had different parts, different objects, car parts, refrigerators, monitors, kettles, you mentioned. But upon arriving here, these are not just waste, and they don't only serve one purpose. Repairers scavenge spare parts. Miners will be looking for copper and other metals. Crafters who are making the cook stoves that I've showed at the beginning, inspecting the aluminum boards to find a specific one for making cook stoves, and the remaining will end up to a scrap dealer who will eventually sell it to manufacturing industries. So the significant the problem in our work today is to cope with the abundance of discarded material objects. Since the Industrial Revolution, our planet, this planet, has accumulated 30 trillion tons of waste objects. Our economies and our daily lives are connected to waste. Waste production, sorting, reusing, recycling, or removing it out from our faces. But just as industrial workplaces generate these global flows of waste, waste streams themselves are more becoming workplaces. Places for value recovery and reintegration of waste materials back to new cycles of value. What happened to this waste, the way it circulates, and how it is repurposed in different ways offer crucial insights into how diverse social, political, and economic relations emerge in the excess of material production. In recent years, maybe not very recent, anthropologists have increasingly focused on the sociality of waste, questions around wasting politics, the relation between waste and human, waste economies, and the relation to the more than humans. Here, one of the pioneers, Mary Douglas, argued that waste is a socially constructed category. What is waste to one individual, or to a society, or to a place, or at that particular time, is not necessarily the same in the other. And that's why waste is a product of social relations. Mary Douglas' analysis focuses more on the theory of social classification and the politics of waste. But that is one way of theorizing waste. Another way to think with waste is through Michael Thompson's rubbish theory. Thompson is a pioneer of contemporary analysis of value embedded in waste. In his book, Rubbish Theory, The Creation and Destruction of Value, Thompson argued that an object will keep decreasing value until it reaches zero. When the item comes to zero value, it becomes rubbish or waste at that particular time and space. Thompson goes further to argue that an object will continue in this timeless and valueless limbo until hitting a social environment that will exhume the value, either the same value or different kind of value. In recent years, very recent, theorization of waste has extended to include the agents of more than humans. Waste labor is enacted in metabolism between human being and the rest of the world. Waste labor is more than just human labor teleology. Human companions participate in waste labor, for example, in infrastructures for transporting and facilitating, infrastructure for transporting, but also in facilitating metabolism, or by providing care and companionship to humans working with waste. And you can see in this photo, at this workshop, there was a dog whom we become very close. So Donna Haraway argues that what goes on in waste labor also constitutes other species in variable work. But for the matter of this presentation, I'm not going to focus on Mary Douglas' dichotomy of purity and danger, or the more than humans. Rather, I will focus on labor processes and labor relations that contribute in the process of harnessing value from e-waste, from electronics. So if I move to electronic waste, electronics are a mark of our modern society. They symbolize human control over time, distance, and space, exquisiteness, and effectiveness. More importantly, they have become essential in everyday life, perhaps to the extent that we may be approached, or to borrow from Donna Haraway, a cyborg prothesis. The amount and variety of electronic equipment is once mundane and shockingly large, both in global South and the global North. However, most of these electronics have short and finite lifespan and are discarded even more frequent. So the constant flow of technologies and products in the market, together with improvement through newer and better models, or through planned obsolescence, have made people to desire and often encouraged to discard old devices. 2016 alone, the planet, we produced 44.7 million tons of e-waste, which equals to 6.1 kilograms per each inhabitant of the planet. And of course, Norway being the leading producer per capita. But from that production, somehow a large quantity of e-waste materials are exported to poor countries for dumping or as used electronics. And this is facilitated by weak implementation of conventions like the Basel, the Stockholm, or the African Bamako Convention, which mean to control this disposal of e-waste materials, but also high costs for managing these defunct devices, repairing in developed countries, but also recycling in some regions underpin these global flows. Yet, irrespective of whether electronics are exported as waste or used devices, once they reach developing countries, and I'm talking Tanzania in particular, they become more than just waste. Defunct electronics converge into new assemblages in which they take on new values through salvaging activities. However, the problem with the current models or current analysis of e-waste is based on the resource toxic dichotomy. Just like a coin, we see head and tail. However, there is a thin area between head and tail that we do not bother to consider. This area, which Catherine Alexander and Michael Sanchez called the area of indeterminacy. This area is the area that defies this classification, this divide between value and toxins. And I quote, the classification is a profound moral process, making some places, some materials, certain actions, and people visible, while others are left wild and or in darkness or even unmapped. So in this paper, I want to bring this concept of indeterminacy, which appears in three forms, the same ways as Alexander Sanchez has suggested. First, lack of incorporating my interlocutors at the workshop, but also in general other informal waste workers in current and future government e-waste management strategies because of that divide. And second, as I have proposed before, these e-waste salvaging activities complicates the future of e-waste recycling direction. And last, as they form basis for people's livelihood, and the way I've shown on the photos that they permeate into cities' fabrics, they resist formalization, monopolization, and techno-based recycling system that many models, the one I've shown at the beginning, propose. So in this talk, I want to stay at one point of encounter at this workshop to examine labor and capital relations that the media never shows us, but also us in research sometimes we tend to ignore. To do so, I extend my analysis not only to what is happening, but also to try to connect with the histories, material conditions, social and labor relation, and cultural logics through which my interlocutors at Mahakama friji engage with these materials. So I'll move on to give a little bit synopsis of the workshop. So Mahakama friji is not easy to find. Is in the middle of bustling low-income residential area, famously known as Uswahilini in Tanzania, basically where the Swahili people live, but also means the low-income area, which is very close to the Dar es Salaam city center. It's hidden somehow, though it in this bustling neighborhood it's hard to find it, but also easy to find. And this is how it is. So the workshop itself is 15 meters and 30 meters wide. And it occupies by this tall building, which is made out of iron corrugated sheets. There's a small road on the front, you can see on the picture on the left, which stretches 250 meters on both ends, and then hitting a T-junction. So this makes it very convenient for them because there's less traffic that they can conduct their business on the road, as you can see on the photos. In this workshop, there are around 25 to 30 charcoal stove crafters, those who are making charcoals, master crafters, and their apprentices. Many of these crafters are either first or second generation migrants from Tabora, where I'm coming from. I'll come back to that. There's also around 20 scrap collectors, most of them, young men ranging from their late teenage years to mid-20s. But also there's 3 scrap dealers. The building itself, the corrugated leaf, with no walls, reflects its temporality, which means at any point, my interlocutors are ready to move to another place, as they have done 6, 7 times in the past 15 years. But currently, they've been here for a couple of years, just because the current property owner, or where the workshop is owned by the ruling party, Chama cha Mapinduzi. So this is just one workshop that I worked on. So in Dar es Salaam, there are thousands of these small workshops. And a survey which was conducted by Case and Omar in 2018 estimates in Kinondoni municipality, one of 5 municipalities of Dar es Salaam, there were around 85 workshops like this, which employed an average of 2,125 people. However, in this workshop, the labor processes are organized through a hybridity of traditional patriarch hierarchy arrangement, kingship, and tribal relations, which I'll explain a little bit soon. And these places are sources of labor assemblages, moral guidance, and means for conflict resolution. So what I'm trying to say is these places are organized through these traditional patriarch hierarchy arrangements, through kingship, through tribal relations, which form labor assemblages, but also guidance to how people, my interlocutors, interact with each. So these workshops are transient workspaces. Ordinary people innovatively using local knowledge, skills, and network combined with the new technologies to transform wasted objects into value. And I will talk that a little bit later. But I want to go first, how someone become a member. So I want to talk about belonging to these cycles of workshop, in referring to this workshop that I worked with. So the crafters at Mahakama ya friji, the crafters. So there are 3 groups that I've already mentioned randomly. I will put them together. So we have the crafters who make cook stores, and there's waste collectors who goes around the city and collect materials, and then there are scrap dealers. So the crafters at Mahakama ya friji come from the same tribe, actually, called the Nyamwezi. The Nyamwezi, which means the Westerners, dwells around 200 kilometers from Lake Tanganyika, and around 800 something from Dar es Salaam. But however, early anthropologists, especially Abraham, who studied the Nyamwezi society, observed Nyamwezi kingship relations did not follow particular anthropological labels, patrilineal, matrilineal, or cognatic. The Nyamwezi system could be described as a combination of a range of structural and behavioral features. And for that matter, Abraham argues that anyone could become a Nyamwezi. So the Nyamwezi Empire, which back in the day was known as Unyanyembe, comprised of several chieftains, including the most famous one and Mtemi, or Chief Mirambo from Uriankuru, which is around 70 kilometers from Tabora. Mirambo came to power and became very powerful on the last quarter of the 19th century. So Milambo was very influential, both politically and military, to the extent that the Arab merchants paid tax, hongo, what's called hongo in Nyamwezi, to his chiefdom. But not only that, he defeated the Arabs and he defeated even the Germans in the first battles during German occupation of Tanganyika. And one of the reasons that Milambo managed to defeat the Arabs and the Germans, regardless of their might technology, was the use of a military segment called Rugaruga. But this segment, the Rugaruga militants, actually was made mostly by Nguni warriors. And Ngun is a tribe that migrated from South Africa, escaping the brutal leadership of Shaka Zulu, and they migrated northwards. And some of the groups ended up in the Nyamwezi land. So these Rugaruga were assimilated into Nyamwezi, and they managed to make the Nyamwezi, especially Milambo, army very strong. But also, Unyanyembe, the empire, was the largest hinterland business and strategic center. The Nyamwezi were the early long-distance traders, the middlemen of value transfers and value exchange between the hinterland and the coast during the heyday of slave, salt, and ivory trade. Their business endeavors stretched from Belgium, Congo to coast of Indian Ocean. But on top of that, their neighbors, the Kimbu, were skilled ironsmiths. So if you combine the assimilation of the Nguni into their army, participation in trade, but also being close to the iron technology, made the Nyamwezi empires very powerful. So why am I talking about all this history? To understand labor relations and specialization, tribal attachment and kinship relationship, at this workshop, these tribal attachment and historical issues play a very vital role. So among the crafters and their apprentices, only 2 came from other tribes. Though I don't mean that the domination of Nyamwezi here at the workshop as crafters make them the tribe, the waste workers. Doesn't make the Nyamwezi waste workers. But I'm saying this is a connection that assemble these crafters. So this relationship extrapolates also the division of labor at the workshop. So for example, among the waste collectors, there was no Nyamwezi. And 2 of the scrap dealers actually were owned by people from the Chaga tribe. In contrast, even the youngest craft apprentices was from the Nyamwezi. So what I mean here, this relationship coming from the same tribe, coming from the same area, coming from Tabora, actually determine one's acceptance at this which also played with me when the first time when I approached them, they were very hesitant until they discovered that I was also from Tabora. So from there, I became Wangwise, which means someone from homeland. So these relationships, according to Abraham, are embedded in the Nyamwezi. And that's why it's easy for them to assemble other Nyamwezis to come and work at the workshop. After going so much around into the history, I just want to move into actually labor relations. So we only make cook stoves. We only make stoves for homemakers. Managing competition and the rise of specialization in the workshop. George, whom I followed the most, had developed a certain specialization that aimed him a bit more than the rest at the workshop, the rest of the crafters. So George has transformed the traditional, the old charcoal stove and barbecue stove to integrate gas system, as you can see on the photos on the right. So this is his way of tinkering with things and trying to develop different models to be different from the rest of the crafters. And I spoke with him recently. He has even started producing wardrobes and cabinets from these aluminum materials that they buy from the collectors. But one of his most favored invention is the French fries fryer, because there's a boom on fast food consumption in the cities, especially in Dar es Salaam, especially the French fries and fried chicken. So his invention of making this cook stove, I didn't manage to find the photo, but looks similar to the one on the lower right, make him not only to work at the workshop, but also to interact with business and restaurants outside the workshop. But this diversification that George is inventing arises from many years of making these stoves, but also his adoption to new trends and new markets that arises with also increasing income among Tanzanians. Another crafters, which is a brother, a father, and a grandson. They all work at the same workshop. For them, and the brother told me, tunatengeneza majiko ya kina mama nyumbani, which means we are making cook stoves only for women, for homemaking. And I was like, why don't you make gas stoves like George? So he said, the demand for household stoves is higher because majority of people still, of households, as I've shown, have the cook stove, the charcoal cook stove, even if they have a gas stove. But also, production costs are low and less time consuming. But what he told me, which was very, very fascinating, that his brother, Charles, has developed a perfect mixture, because these household cook stoves, as I've showed from the beginning, it's made of these aluminum boards from outside, and in the middle is a clay pot, which they have to buy from a third supplier. So and this clay pot is meant to reduce the burning of the charcoal, but also it keeps heat. But what he's saying me, that was not enough. His brother knows how to make this perfect mixture, which is put between the aluminum board and the clay to stick it together, which also actually made the outer part of the cook stove, the aluminum part, the one not absorbing heat from the clay. So it keeps heat, their style, it burns low, And it's very easy to start the charcoal when you want to cook, because cooking, I don't want to go to cooking tradition, but in Tanzania, people cook 3 times a day. So if a stove starts slowly, then it's exceeding this time for cooking. So he claimed pompously, saying that's why you'll never hear our hammers going quiet. They never go silent, because we always have women who want cook stoves. Another group from the workshop is the scrap dealers. These are the workshop elites. They are the tycoons. But they told me we are wajasiriamali taka. So wajasiriamali is a Swahili word which means entrepreneurs, but not entrepreneurs when we think Silicon Valley, those called entrepreneurs with millions of money, but means people who employ themselves through small businesses. But if you translate wajasiriamali, like a direct translation, it means I think it means heroes of wealth. So taka is waste. So if you combine wajasiriamali taka, it means the heroes of waste wealth, which is just amazing. So they usually have a small warehouse, and they will hire one of the trusted scrap collectors who have a monthly payment, and sometimes they will, pay for his lunch. And to start a scrap dealing business, you need at least around $2,000 as a capital. But this excludes warehousing rent. You need a couple of those carts. You can see those carts on the left, but there's one also on the right photo, which the scrap collectors use to walk around the city to collect materials. But also you need a weighing machine, like the one on the right photo. These are not included in this $2,000 capital. So I want to go a little bit into the relationship between scrap dealers and scrap collectors. Johnny, remind me when I have 5 minutes left. Yeah. So the relationship between the scrap dealers and scrap collectors, it's just like this. So as I said, we went to Pugu, the landfill. We didn't find that much material, so nothing ending up in dumping places. So most of the scraps are collected from households and from businesses. And it can happen in 2 ways. First, by buying from the owners, or by getting them for free. But getting them for free, it's usually a couple of times with me when I went to collect materials with them, is from the Worth neighborhood, is from the peninsula, it's from Masaki, Mbezi, Oyster Bay, where the middle class and the higher class live, and they just give it away. Just help us get this out. But in most part of the city, you have to negotiate the price. And I don't want to talk about this today, but it needs a lot of skills, because you are given an object and you have to make estimation how much you're gonna get out when you bring it to the workshop. And that's from there, then you can negotiate the price, how much you can pay this person. So, but I'm not talking about that. So there is no assurance of getting scraps for free. Therefore, scrap collectors need to have money to buy these materials from people. For that matter, the scrap dealer, whom a scrap collector is attached, has to give a startup day loan. So every day they have to provide a startup loan. A startup day loan is an amount that a scrap dealer will give to a collector. The collector will use the money to buy scraps. Upon return to the workshop, the collector will sell whatever they have collected, first to the repairers, then to the crafters, and the rest will go to the scrap dealer. And then the collector will return this loan. On top of the startup loan, scrap collectors do not own the carts, those carts, you can see them. And economically, it does not make any logic to own one. Therefore, every morning, a collector must rent a cart from a scrap dealer. The logic behind not owning the carts, first, it is an expensive investment. But even though the collectors could afford to own their own carts, they regard the collecting job as temporal. Therefore, there is no need to invest in it. The charge for renting a cart is 5,000 Tanzanian shillings, approximately $2 a day. This amount is also deducted on top of the startup loan. However, the new cart, if a scrap collector wanted to have his own cart, costs around 100,000 T shillings, approximately 50 US dollars. First, this amount is considerable. It's a considerable investment for a job everyone knows that they are not aspiring doing for our long. So scrap collectors, so that's one part. But the other kind of relationship that the scrap collectors have with the scrap dealers, they don't have any form contract. A contract arises in the morning when the collector rent the carts and take up the startup day loan, which is obliged to return after the sale. The amount and the worth of scrap materials collected, it varies daily depending on the day and where the collector went. So sometimes there is redundancy to that. For example, the days that the collector didn't get enough materials, there might be some are betting that they should not pay for the card, they just have to return the startup loan. So the relationship between this is the relationship between the scrap dealers and the collectors. But there's another kind of relationship between the scrap dealers and the crafters. So first, their relationship is on rent and electricity bill, because the workshop is owned by the crafters who have a contract or an agreement with the ruling party. So although the scrap dealers do not have many electric machinery, apart from the lighter inside the warehouse, now and then they contribute to power charges. But second, the scrap dealers let the crafters buy aluminium boards from the collectors wherever they need. The reason behind this, the aluminium price in the market is not that higher compared to metals like copper, cast, stainless steel, and iron. And these metals are heavy and more valuable in the market, so are more preferable by the collectors. And on the other side, aluminium boards are low value, lighter, they take much spaces in the warehouse, so they are ready to let it to the cook stove. So this material specialization, which has risen by chances, allows smooth transaction between the collectors and the crafters. The second last part, I want to talk a little bit about how tools now connect to all this message. So on the other hand, the crafters, although their work does not require that much capital compared to the scrap dealers, however, the possession of vital tools, and of course having the material, create certain classes and highlight among themselves. There are several essential tools to the crafters. First is the rail gauge, you can see on the left. That is the prime tool at the workshop. But also there are other small tools like scissors, screwdrivers. But on top of that, apart from co-opting tools like rail gauges, scissors, and the other things, they also make their own tools. So for example, the tool on the right is made from scrap materials, and it is used, when you make the charcoal stove, because they cut the aluminium board by scissors, you have sharp edges. So they use this machine, which is made from tuk-tuk piston axle. You can see the two tuk-tuk axle to bend over the sharp edges of the material, so that when you sell to someone to use, they should not get injured. So to have this tool means the crafter will not have to borrow from the others, hence becoming independent. So the rail gauge is the most expensive one because it's difficult to get, but also I don't want to go into politics of it, but it's illegal to own it. So to own a rail gauge means one can work at any time and for as long as they want. Borrowing from others can lead to interference of the owner's work. But apart from these co-opted tools, they also have industrial tools. So for example, George has an electricity grinder because of his work with the gas cook stoves, but also he works some parts of like spare parts for, especially for buses in Dar es Salaam. I will not go in details to that. So he needs the electricity grinder. But also he's renting this grinder to collectors, especially when they want to mine copper from the refrigerator compressor, because it's very, very difficult to hammer it, to open it by hammering. So they use this electricity grinder to cut it open. But on the other hand, the brothers, Charles and Mwanawane, for them, they own a welding machine. And this just because of their specialization, but also because the welding machine has become very central in stitching together the cook stoves, that also earn them a place in the hierarchy of the workshop. So these hierarchies I'm talking about define power structure, pet classes at the workshop. And as I've mentioned to summary, they emerge from first crafting skills and knowledge that one's own. For example, you can see between the master crafters and the apprentices, but also investment in tools which bring extra income, but also diversification of products, small cook stove, gas stoves, and the rest. Yeah, so the master crafters and the apprentices also have their own strata. So I want to talk the relationship between the master crafters and the apprentices. So the apprentices, usually young, come to learn the art of craft with a different aspiration. So for example, Kevin, who lives with his mother just a few streets down, he just wants to learn crafting and stay at the workshop and a life there. But the young Samwel, who got the young Samwel there, from me, he's called Samwel, but then they had to call him young Samwel because I was the older Samwel. Working together with his father, the uncle, and the grandfather, want to learn the art of crafting and move out and open his own place. As with the crafters and collectors, there's no formal contract between the crafters and apprentices. So the apprentices are expected to show up wherever there is a job. However, when there is no work, they are not bounded to be there. And this brings to very important point. Just because they are not wage laborers, because they don't receive a time-based wage. The master crafter compensates for apprentice labor. They are paid according to their participation in a project. If the master crafter has received a big order, he might assign his apprentices to work on different parts of the cook stoves. However, when they don't have a lot of orders, small orders, so the master crafter might assign each apprentices to produce a cook stove from the beginning to the end. So labor compensation for apprentices depends first on the types of stoves and the amount that is to be produced. So for example, the cost of producing a charcoal barbecue, stove for a restaurant, the big one, is 8,000 Tanzanian shillings, around $40 US. The costs include aluminum boards, metal coils, welding, electricity, and paint. George will sell these stoves for 100,000, $50 US. So the profit is 10 US. The apprentices will receive his cut of 5,000, which is $2.5 per stove. And this price will change depending on the amount of stoves produced. So remuneration of one's labor is compensated for their contribution to the process to the labor process. Unlike in wage labor, where it is time. Am I over? Okay, I'm finishing. I'm winding up. So unlike in wage labor, where it's time that is compensated, time spent in production, here is the labor itself that is being compensated. So to conclude, I just quick to sum up, I have discussed all these complex, social, technological, economic relations that exists at Mahakama friji, just to illuminate that those models that I presented at the beginning will be important when the government develop these models to engage with issues or to engage with this informal industry. I think I will stop there. I would like to have discussion and keep talking. Thanks.
Okay, thanks a lot, Samwel. I think I'll just stop the recording